This is the John Fredericks Show. Joining us now live from Washington, D.C. is U.S. Senator Tim Kaine. Senator, great to have you with us.
John, it's great to be with you. I need more adults in the room where I am, so it's good to join you.
Well, it's always good to be here. Hey, just want to give you a shout-out. Don't forget, Saturday is the Virginia Derby at Colonial Downs. Tell all your friends, post time, 5 o'clock. Don't want to miss that. If you tune in Friday at 8 o'clock, I'm going to give you the winner so you could take that double down and then take the money and help pay down the deficit. See, that's my contribution to the federal government right there. I'm going to pick the winner. Even though
the Virginia Derby's fun. I've been to it before. Anybody who's looking for plans Saturday, it's a great event.
It is, without a doubt. Now, Senator, you just got back from a landmark trip to the Middle East, and we're going to go over that. But I want to start. I want to play a clip here from Howard Aaronstein on a new development since you got back that's coming out of the administration.
Pentagon spokesman George Little played down the report that President Obama could remove all U.S. troops from Afghanistan because of frustration with President Karzai.
The White House has made clear that there is a zero option. There are other options on the table as well.
Jen Psaki added at the State Department,
"This is a decision that the president will make. He is still reviewing options and has not made a decision about the size of a possible U.S. presence."
The U.S. is negotiating with Afghanistan about leaving a small security force when combat troops leave at the end of next year. Howard Aaronstein, CBS News, Washington.
Now, Senator Kaine, you were there in Afghanistan over the Independence Day holiday. You had a chance to meet with troops, leaders. And now the president's saying, you know what, maybe I'm done with this whole thing. What do you make of it?
Well, here's my interpretation, and I talked with folks from the White House yesterday. There is a reality, John, which is if, just like in Iraq, if we can't reach a bilateral security agreement with President Karzai that protects the rights, that protects the safety of American troops, then there's got to be a zero option. As you know, we tried to reach that agreement with the Iraqi government. They refused to reach an agreement that provided those protections to American troops, so there ended up being a zero option in Iraq. I don't think that's the best outcome. I think the best outcome for us and for Afghanistan is that we reach a bilateral security agreement, the rights and safety of American service members are protected, and that we then do leave a small force there to train, assist, and advise the Afghan National Security Forces. I think that's the best thing, and I think that's what I was hearing from the military. That's what I was hearing from other countries in the region, from our NATO allies. I think that's a consensus goal in terms of what the optimum is. But if we can't reach an agreement that protects American troops, we're not going to be able to do that. So I encourage the U.S. to continue to press forward on those negotiations, and I sure hope the Afghan government, if they're going to listen to their people, I think they would want some continuing assistance for the sizable Afghan National Security Force.
Now, Senator, what do you think is driving the president's frustration here?
Well, I don't have personal experience in terms of negotiating with President Karzai. I spent time in Afghanistan in 2006 when I was governor, and I met with President Karzai when he was here and visiting Congress in January. But by all accounts I've heard is that negotiating with him is it's volatile. He's mercurial. It's hot and cold, and sometimes we think we're getting along fine, and then we find that he makes statements that are very negative about the U.S. that has sacrificed an awful lot in Afghanistan. So I think the frustration is just we think for the purposes of that national security force having continuing America, not combat operations, but training assistance makes sense. That's what I think the Afghan people want. I think, frankly, President Karzai would want that. He doesn't want to be abandoned at this stage, but the negotiation is real tough. So we need to just keep pressing forward on it, have that negotiation. When I was in Afghanistan, it was interesting. I was there with 7 other senators. One, Senator Graham from South Carolina, is a reservist, and he was actually there doing reserve duty, and he's a JAG lawyer, and part of what he was doing was participating in a general way in some of the discussions surrounding the BSA negotiation. We just need to prosecute that, get the negotiation done, and I believe the right strategy is for us to leave a limited force that would help guarantee that the elections, presidential elections, go in April of 2014. To have a peaceful transition of a presidency in Afghanistan would be a first ever. It would be a historic thing, and I think continuing to have a small presence there would help make that happen.
And this is the John Fredericks Show. We're with U.S. Senator from Virginia, Tim Kaine. Senator Kaine, let's go to Egypt. I know you were not there. However, you were in the kind of the middle of it.
Yeah, everybody was talking about it all last week when we were there.
What do you think our position should be right now, especially as it relates to the $1.5 billion or so in aid that we're providing the Egyptian military?
John, let me just start with a little bit of law that you know, but just for listeners, there is an American law, the Foreign Assistance Act, that says if what happened in Egypt was a coup, then foreign assistance stops. If it was a popular uprising and the military supported the people in a popular uprising, then the aid doesn't necessarily stop. But at a minimum, we have to scrutinize very carefully aid and whether we continue it. As I think about a coup, I mean, just my own life experience and the history I've lived through when the Chilean government killed President Allende in Chile, that was a coup.
Yes.
This was 20 million Egyptians signing petitions demanding Morsi's ouster, vastly more than voted for Morsi to be the leader in the first place. And the military watching a destabilizing situation where it had even gotten to the point where President Morsi was calling, we need to participate in a holy war in Syria. The situation was devolving downward. Allies in the region, allies of the United States, in particular the UAE and Jordan, were very strong that, look, this is the military trying to stabilize a situation that's disintegrating. And you ought to be very delicate and continue to provide support as the military respects the rights of civilians. You saw yesterday that the UAE just increased financial assistance to the Egyptian government. Right. Saudi Arabia did the same thing. So what I think we ought to be doing is probably over the course of about 60 days, we ought to almost daily be getting briefings on what the military is doing. Yesterday they made announcements about a transitional governmental organization and prime minister and about plans to move to elections and constitutional rewrite. We need to just every day look at that through a microscope and make a determination about whether they are good to this to their proclamation that they're moving back toward a broad and encompassing democracy. One of the things we have to scrutinize is whether they are refraining from using violence and promoting security. They can't use violence against even groups they don't like. If they don't like the Muslim Brotherhood, still the Muslim Brotherhood is representative of some part of that population. They need to be respecting the rights of political minorities, and we need to be scrutinizing that. I don't think we should cut off or suspend aid now, but we need to be scrutinizing and holding the military to their claim that they're moving toward a broad and all-encompassing next chapter in the move toward democracy.
During your visit to the Middle East, you also had a chance to visit some of the Syrian refugees, as I understand it.
Yes, in Turkey, yeah.
In Turkey now. In speaking to them and speaking to others, has your position on what our involvement should be with the Syrian rebels evolved at all?
John, I will say this. I mean, I'm going to be real candid with you. I went over there with a lot of unresolved questions and even confusion about the situation in Syria. And after spending time in a Syrian refugee camp in Turkey, about 250,000 refugees into Turkey and over 500,000 in Jordan, and then spending time with the Jordanian governmental officials and our own folks in Jordan who work on the Syria issue, I realized that my confusion is not just me. It is a very complicated situation. As you know, and you've shared it with your listeners, Assad's atrocities against his own people, they're unforgivable. That he is backed so heavily by Iran and Hezbollah, obviously grave cause for concern. That he's backed so heavily by Russia, that's also a significant cause for concern. So obviously that instinct that we have as Americans to want to play a meaningful role in avoiding humanitarian disasters and avoiding bloodshed, that instinct is called into question by what he's done. On the other hand, the opposition in Syria is a very fragmented and fractious opposition, and some of the strongest components of the opposition are al-Nusra, the al-Nusra Front, which is an al-Qaeda affiliate. And there are other aspects of the opposition that are also al-Qaeda connected. And so what we see happening is, it may not be a civil war. It may be more of a religious and sectarian battle. And for us to get involved in supporting one side in a sectarian battle doesn't make any sense. So what I have said as a Foreign Relations Committee member is, it's fine to provide non-lethal aid to the opposition. I think that's fine. But if we're going to move into the provision of lethal aid, even small arms, we ought to insist that the opposition is broad-based, that they include all elements of Syrian society, not only as an opposition force, but even in planning for a post-Assad government. We can't support an opposition that's going to then turn around and massacre Christians or massacre Druze minority or even massacre the Alawite Muslim minority that is kind of part of the Assad ruling coalition. So we have to keep the pressure on the opposition to be broad-based. And the other thing we got to do, John, we got to keep the pressure on for a restart to the talks in Geneva for some discussion about a negotiated settlement. I think the chances of that working are not that high, but it is still worth trying, and I know Secretary Kerry and others are doing it. So hopefully, conditions on the ground may convince, and our diplomacy with Russia, for example, may convince the sides that we ought to sit down and chart a path for the, that the Syrian actors ought to sit down and chart a path forward.
Well, I think you absolutely nailed that one. Often, Senator, we are on opposite ends of the ideological spectrum, but I have to say I agree with everything that you just said. Give our audience a sense, our two major allies in the Middle East, UAE and Jordan. I know you had a chance to spend a little time with them. Are they happy with how things are being handled in the U.S., and is our alliance with them sound?
Yeah, a great question. So, in the Arab world, obviously Israel is our biggest ally in the neighborhood, but in the Arab world, it is important for Americans to understand that the UAE and Jordan, they are Muslim Arab nations that are strong U.S. allies and that have been allies with Israel. They are moderating influences that want a Middle East defined by trade, engagement, respect for borders, stronger and growing economies, education, increasing opportunities for women. They don't do things exactly the way we do them here, but I can assure you from having been in the UAE now twice, and this is my first visit to Jordan, these are very, very good allies. So here's what they think. They're very happy with the U.S. role right now in continuing to keep alive the prospect for dialogue between Israel and Palestine around a two-state solution. The UAE foreign minister said, we need more moderating influences in this region, and we have to reduce the agitating influences, and a persistent and sizable agitation is the status of Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And if we can even get them to the table to start the dialogue, that's going to drop the temperature in the region in an important way. They were strongly encouraging that we continue, that we don't just suspend aid to Egypt, but that we continue to look closely what the Egyptian military is doing, and hold them accountable, but that we be open to seeing what's happening as a transition to greater democracy in Egypt. The area where they are troubled by this is the Syrian situation to a great degree, and especially Jordan. I mean, John, Jordan is 6-7 million people. They've got over 500,000 refugees right now. Think about the United States, we're 300 million people. I mean, the equivalent would be, if we had 60 million refugees, already coming into the country. That's what they're dealing with. And Jordan is a poor country with very little water, so they get taxed very heavily by this influx of refugees. They want the U.S. to do more, but they recognize that both the Assad side and the opposition side is problematic. So the main thing they want us to do is keep the pressure on to restart discussions in Geneva. The last thing about our allies is, they are very much with us on we can't have a nuclear Iran. We can't tolerate a nuclear Iran. That means sanctions and more of them. That means credible military threat to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But they also are realistic and pointing out that Iran's not going to back away from a nuclear program and say, we're backing away because the U.S. is so tough on us. They got to have a positive reason to back away. They got to have an internal political face-saving reason to back away. And so trying to be creative on the diplomatic side while maintaining a military threat and maintaining sanctions to give them, sometimes when you're in a negotiation, you got to, build somebody a ladder to let them get off the ledge that they're on, or provide an exit hatch for them. So there is a need for some strong and creative diplomacy as well with Iran right now.
Domestically, quickly, what's going on now with Obamacare?
I'm going to get briefed on this later today, so I was away last week when the announcement was made. My gut is telling me this, that the delay of the employer mandate gives more time for the exchanges to be built in a robust way, and the exchanges can then be utilized by employers to better find the health care that they might want to purchase for their employees. So you've seen a couple of states that raced ahead on the exchanges. Virginia didn't. Virginia hung back hoping that the Obamacare would be thrown out by the Supreme Court. But the states that raced ahead on the exchanges are already seeing some success in the use of the exchanges promoting competition that is holding costs down. And so my sense is what the administration is doing is let's be robust in building out the exchanges over the next year, and then employers who are mandated to provide coverage will actually have some good options as they go out and shop for it.
So you think the delay is based on the policies that you just said, implementation, or is it politically driven in fear of the midterms?
Look, I'd be naive to say that there wasn't some political calculation as well. I'm sure that there was. I haven't talked to the team, but I'm sure that was something that was pondered. But again, if you're going to mandate, whether you mandate individuals or employers, if you're going to mandate them to purchase, you want to have a very vigorous marketplace where options are out there, and there's the kind of competition that will enable people both to easily shop but also get favorable pricing. The states that have raced ahead on the exchanges, I think, are finding that the exchanges help them do that.
Okay, Senator Tim Kaine, we're out of time. We want to thank you for joining us here on the John Fredericks Show. Senator Tim Kaine, you can get more information. Just go to senatorkaine.com. We appreciate the time. And, Senator, I'm going to email your staff my winner in the Virginia Derby. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.
Thank you, man. Talk to you.
All right.
Bye.